And then that's when you say, thanks for keeping me company.
Thanks for keeping me company.
Yeah,
Likewise, bro.
Yeah, that's good. Right there. I just feel like there wasn't that line before for him to say that. I'm
No,
like,
he's totally getting scared.
likewise, bro. I'm like, likewise what?
Likewise, what month of action?
That was so much better than the last time.
You framed that very well.
That was like 7.5. You're watching Through the Lens, where we talk about past films that we've worked on here at Overnight Pictures. And we're going to continue our talk today about Silver Woods. I've got Adam with me to do that now.
Hey, Clay.
Hey, Adam.
Hey. Last time we were talking, it was a long conversation. We talked about a lot of great stuff. And today, as promised, I wanted to get more into, now that we've talked about the crew that you had in our last episode, I wanted to talk more about some of the gear that you used. And the reason why I want to talk about that stuff today is because so many times, especially on YouTube, where all of us are watching this right now, we have so many people that are just like shill boys for different cameras, or people always talking about the newest, greatest camera. And it seems like there's like 10 cameras that come out per year. And they always want a little bit more and a little bit more money, and they all seem fantastic. But before we get started, I just wanted to kind of touch base and get a kind of consensus between the both of us that, you don't really need a brand new camera to make a good film. As a matter of fact, I don't think you had one for Silver Woods, and you still made a feature out of it.
That is true. And I'm actually, if I had the money, like, don't get me wrong, if I had more money, I would probably buy newer equipment, better equipment. But still, to this day, I'm actually right now shooting on the Blackmagic 4K production cinema camera, which
Nothing wrong with that.
9 years old. It's not new, let's just say that. And my backup camera is the Canon R50, which is newer, but it's not really advanced. It's like an intermediate camera. And what we used on Silver Woods was I wish I could do it again because it would look better. But no, you're 100% right. It is much more important to make the film, to work on the film, release the film, then wait until you have that piece of equipment or that dolly, that lens, that actor, whatever you can't afford at the time. Because, it's no different than in life. You're never going to have enough money if you just sit around waiting until you have enough money.
The time's never going to be perfect, right?
It's true, but it's so true.
So, we worked on this together, and it was my first time working with you. And I got to set, and I got to tell you, this is the first time I've been on a set where someone pulls out a DSLR to start shooting. I did not expect you to be like, here's a DSLR, we're shooting on this today. And you were shooting with Canons. Was it with the D5?
No.
What did you have?
Not even. I had the 6D and the 7D Mark II. So,
oh gosh,
at the time, I was doing a lot of like sports photography and portrait photography. So the 7D Mark II was really fast at the time. Obviously, it's not now, but and then the 6D was like the smaller cousin of the 5D. So really good full frame camera, but very limited. And not that it really matters anymore these days, but the megapixel count on that was low. I want to say 22. I could be wrong. You can fact check me. Fact check. I can get that word out if you want to, but I know that it's not great.
Yeah, and the thing is that a lot of new cameras that come out, even the camera that I'm using right now to shoot this with is like the Lumix S5 Mark II, right? Still 24 megapixels. It's still a great camera.
Yeah.
I think it's great. This is the newest thing that I have. But a lot of my cameras are, 8 years old. I just shot a short, right? We just shot a short, and we shot feature films before on cameras that are now 6 years old. And I chased gear for a long time too. But I guess the point is that when we started, a long time. But when you shot this, when I was standing there and you were shooting this, and I was acting only, you used what you had. And what you had was two DSLRs. So
Yeah.
that's what you used. Now, you had some great lights. I'll give you that. Like, you had great lights, some really fantastic equipment. And I think lighting's important, right?
Right.
But I mean,
Well,
I guess what I'm going to say is I'm sorry.
No, you're
I'll
fine.
just ask and then I'll let you get onto it. But but I guess what I'm trying to say is that well, I mean, what would you find to be more important? Would you find that getting the latest, greatest camera is more important than setting up the scene and lighting and getting blocking done? I mean, how would you place all of those things in a hierarchy?
I think it depends. In all honesty, it's different for every shoot. If you know going into a project that you are going to be bottlenecked for whatever reason. So in my case with Silver Woods, it was the equipment. I knew we weren't shooting in 4K. We weren't shooting with great cameras. Yeah, we did have lights and they worked, but I'm not going to say that it was great lighting. What I was going to say is I actually bought the 6D week or two before we shot. There's a shop here locally. I don't even know if it's still around. It's been years since I've been there, but it's called Tempe Camera. And when I bought...
Still there.
Okay, I figured there's not a whole lot of places locally like that, but when I bought the camera, they actually threw in the lights for like cheap. Like I think it was like a $300 light kit and I paid like $50. They gave me like a huge discount for spending money on the camera. So that's the only reason I had those lights to begin with, was because it was a gift, more or less. But you know, so when I went into the shoot knowing that I wasn't going to get the look perfectly, at least not every time, I think I had to put emphasis on other things. Now, you were on set, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, but we shot the film really fast. So I won't go into detail because I want to let you handle that how you want to. But that was a bottleneck as well. So that allowed me to not really put any emphasis on blocking or working with the actors. So I think the order of importance when you're working on a film has to pertain to what you can control. And I'm sure even in Hollywood, when they're working with millions and millions of dollars, there are situations that can come up that they can't control, or they can't control as well as they'd like to. You know, like when it comes to stunts and stuff like that. Like you look at people like, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I'll be quick. You look at people like Tom Cruise. I just watched a video of him doing a stunt for one of the Mission Impossible movies, and he like jumps from one building to another and barely grabs on, and he broke his ankle. And he knew that was the only take they were going to use, so he just kept going with his ankle. Like, you can see it from the BTS shot. His ankle is like sideways. But he pulled through it because he knew that that was the only shot they were going to get of that. But stunt work, you know, you plan it, you can't really practice it, so you go do it, and it's probably not going to turn out the way you want. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think the order of importance when it comes to figuring out your workflow is what can I control, what can I directly impact, and where are my problems going to be? Because if you already know it's going to be a problem, wasting time trying to fix it is probably just that, a waste of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember this one time I was on a shoot with Aidan Quinn from Elementary or Legends of the Fall or wherever you remember it from, and it was a movie we were on, and I was a prisoner in a jail cell, and he had to walk by and talk to me, and they had me sitting on this. This is a huge budget production, and they had me sitting on this jail bench that they fashioned to the wall with, I think, some sort of anchors. They were like L mounts, and it was horrible, and it broke. It broke as soon as I sat on it. So I had to like Spider-Man my ass. I had to sit there, fake sitting on something, and I had to hold it with my legs against the wall to make it look like it was still against the wall because they didn't have time to reshoot. And they had a lot of money, but they were just running out of time and they ran out of effort and there was nowhere else to put it. And it ripped holes in the wall. So I had to cover those holes to do that shoot. Jeez. And I can still see it when I watch it. I can see myself struggling. So I know that they just went with the best take they could. So absolutely, to your point, it happens everywhere. Yeah. So it's not going to be perfect. And what did you say? Know what you can control, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be aware. If you just go into a shoot blind and the problem presents itself and you weren't aware, you're just going to have to try to troubleshoot on the set. So obviously there's a difference. Things are going to happen that you weren't prepared for, but there's going to be things that you should be prepared for, especially on a shoestring budget. You know, like a lot of you watching this type of discussion where we're talking about indie film, you know, no one watching this is going to be like, tomorrow they're going to get up and have a $200 million budget. You wouldn't be watching this. You're planning your shoot with nothing, couple hundred, couple thousand, you know, maybe 50,000, who knows? But compared to Hollywood, it's pennies. So there's going to be problems.
Sure. Absolutely. And we had plenty of problems on set, and we're going to get to that. So, you know, you didn't have the best camera, so you worked with what you had. Obviously you shot it in a style, when you got to set, you saw what we had to work with, and you shot it in such a manner that a lot of people have actually called it found footage, which is something that you're known for. Yeah. And I think you kind of lean toward that style a bit more because that's what you had to work with.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, and you know, to be honest, I will say it's not like I really planned to make Silverwoods look found footage. It was just we didn't have any gimbals. We didn't have any time to do any sort of shot other than run and gun, handheld, and that is going to make certain shots look shaky. It's just going to happen. No one can have a steady hand for a 14-hour shoot, or, you know, even longer in some cases. But it's just not going to happen.
Oh, God.
And I think, too, the thing that I have learned, and I will say this, is when you're rushing through a production such as Silverwoods, I think that if it's shaky, while it might not look as professional as, like, you know, I want to bounce off of what you just said. You know, you made a short, The Voodoo That You Do. It looks so polished and professional. Every shot is, you know, on a tripod or slow like a dolly move. There's panning. It just looks really well done.
Some of that was handheld.
Which, see, I wasn't on set, so I don't know. But from a viewer perspective, I can appreciate that. But on Silverwoods, we didn't have time to do all of that. And also the actors had to rush, and we had to rush setting up the lighting. So I think that shaky camera movement hides some of the imperfections that if we tried just throwing it on a tripod for every shot, something would have looked bad. You know, there's a chase scene towards the end of the movie, and I think that it's really not exciting. Like, if you think about it, we'll probably put it in right here so you can see what we're referencing. But right here, right now, one of the friends is running away from everybody, and all he does is run in a circle because we were limited to how much space and land we had. We had like 5 acres to work with, so there was like a plot of forest right here. So we had to make it look like he was running further than he was, and we really just had him run in a circle. And you can't really tell from how we edited the film, but the way we shot it was multiple cameras at the same time kind of running next to them, so you get lost in the trees, and it looks kind of like a jumbled mess, but it also kind of heightens the anxiety because it makes you feel like you're running with this person. And a stationary camera, that wouldn't happen. So no, I don't think that found footage and shaky looks great all the time, but I think that if you're on a low budget and you're limited, it can hide some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about that. Well, that goes kind of into my next, and we've been touching on it every 5 seconds, so I'm going to get into my next question.
Okay.
And so a really huge thing about filmmaking and being an aspiring filmmaker, an amateur filmmaker, or just making indie films and you're making your first one is scheduling. When you're working on a shoestring budget, as you did in Silverwoods, I know you had to negotiate pay or no pay with people. And because you're doing that, there was certain time frames that everybody could do everything, right?
Yeah.
So you had to make it work for everybody, which literally gave you 2 days to do everything. So I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about the struggle that you had scheduling the location, getting everybody on board, and actually the pain you had to go through, which we'll get to also, and those long days where you had to shoot all day. Well, not necessarily the actors had to shoot all day because there was different scenes. We got plenty of breaks. You got to rest. It was a 9-to-5 job for us, but not for you.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. So why don't we start with just the challenge you had with scheduling location and getting everybody together in that one place.
So in the last episode, we talked about using Airbnb. So the gentleman that we rented the cabin from, I want to say I did negotiate a little bit lower than he was asking because the budget was so small. Pretty much the entire budget went into the second camera and the location. You know, we paid him for 2 nights, so we were able to get there at, I think, like 3 p.m. We started shooting at like 4, and we shot till pretty late, maybe like, I want to say 11. I wanted to shoot longer the first day, but if you recall, we actually had a nasty snowstorm come in. It started snowing like light flurries when we got there, and it was on and off, and then probably like 7 o'clock, it just started coming down. And in fact, Mackenzie was supposed to help us out, and he got delayed because the roads, he couldn't even get there. The roads were so like covered in snow. So we kind of like closed down the shoot early that first night. And I remember being super stressed. But then the plan was shooting the entire second day, and then anything that was left after that, we'd go to sleep, wake up early the next morning, and anything that we had left, we would shoot that last morning. That's not exactly how it went. I was pretty happy with everything that we shot after the second day, so I called it a wrap. And I remember waking up fairly early, like 8 a.m. After getting done at probably like, we probably wrapped at like 2:30. And then we went to sleep, got up at 8. And I remember like almost everybody was gone. I don't even remember if you were still there. Everyone just left, or a lot of the actors just left. Because we had wrapped. So I don't even know if they slept there that last night. It was a blur, I'll be honest with you, because we wrapped at 2 or 2:30, but I had to dump all the footage. So I probably myself didn't go to bed until like 4. And then I set an alarm so that I wouldn't oversleep. And I also wanted to get some location wides and stuff. So I walked around that last morning before we like left the Airbnb. But I don't remember seeing very much of the cast. I know my friends and crew had stuck around. You said you were there. I cannot remember. I remember like dying on the way home, like the drive home. I was barely a human.
I remember a lot of times we've been together. I do not like any of those days where we, in the future, after this, had dumped footage till 4 a.m. It is a very hard thing to do.
It really is, but you have to do it. You just have to.
So that's another thing that we're touching on again is you control what you can. You can't control Mother Nature. You had a snowstorm. You had to work around it. So
and it was some
of those.
It was like mid-April too. It was not supposed to storm. I think most of the girls brought like tank tops, spaghetti straps, and then we had to go film in the snow. And
it's crazy.
It was wild. And then I want to touch on the scheduling a bit more because Silver Woods was really the only film that I've made that I didn't write a schedule for. So when we got there, my goal was all of the actors, cast, and crew were just going to be on set the entirety of the shoot and at my beck and call whenever I needed them. So yeah, like you said, there were plenty of times where you got breaks. I didn't need the park ranger. I didn't need the main character. I didn't need the author. I didn't need the side group of friends that were more minor characters. It was just take turns, go eat, sleep, relax, whatever when you're not up. I was up all the time. Like you guys got to break and I would be like, next. and we would just kind of figure out how we were going to shoot it. And it became difficult because it didn't snow the second day, so we had snow on the ground, but it started melting around midday. So we shot it out of order, and typically I would have a shooting schedule. I'd send it to the cast and crew weeks ahead so they would know what days they were going to need to be on set, what we were going to shoot each day, what time we were going to start, like a call sheet. And we didn't do any of that with Silver Woods because it was just, we'll just shoot the order that I feel appropriate with everybody there. And don't do that. But
never do that.
Under such a rush, I do feel like it would have stressed me out more if I had a schedule, because then I would have felt like I needed to stick to it. And with the snow, I would have been like lost. It would have sucked. But I don't recommend not having a schedule.
Yeah, get that schedule, kids. Call sheets are important.
Schedule your peeps.
Yeah, but we all showed up. We all did our job. There's some other challenges that you ran into now that we've talked about scheduling a little bit, and a lot of it has to do with a lot of stale performance from the actors. And I wanted to kind of touch on that because none of the actors, because it happened so rapidly and we hadn't met each other, we didn't get a chance to rehearse on set or before. So a lot of us just kind of had to learn the other actors' methodology as we were going about it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of time for reshoots. You would take a couple takes, but honestly, you had to move on a lot, right? So
I did.
You didn't really get probably the performances that you wanted out of everybody every time. And I just kind of want to know, like, how did that make you feel in the moment? How did you overcome that the best you could? And I mean, even there's times where you were using microphones, but there was so much background noise. Mm-hmm. And they didn't, at the time that you edited, they didn't have like a bunch of these new AI features they have on these nonlinear editors where you can eliminate the background noise so easily. All they had was denoise, which just turned everything into a tin can.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you in those moments, knowing that you spent all this money on this film, that things at times obviously were not going the way that you probably wanted them to go in your mind, and how did you feel like you got the best performance you possibly could out of the actors that you had?
I think that my goal going in was to make sure that I came out with a film. I didn't care if it was good. I didn't care if it was bad. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could make a film with actors, not just friends, that I could, because up until then, I had really only used like locations I was familiar with, like my parents' house, which we did in the last 5 days. When I got married and moved out, I just used my house, and, my wife hid somewhere while we shot, or, we used like my dad's work, stuff like that. So this was really just more of a, what's the next step? And that's what I thought it was. Can I take it? So yeah, there were definitely times where I was like, shoot, I want another take, but it's more important that I get all of the takes, like get everything shot, than getting that one thing perfect, because we could have spent an eternity on some of the scenes, and I knew I couldn't let that happen. And there were times where the actors wanted to, because they knew they weren't happy with their performance, and it was just like, unfortunately, we move on. It was frustrating. It really was, but I think that comes back to what we started this conversation with, of knowing what you can control, and what I could control was making sure everything was shot.
Yeah, fair enough. So we were talking about scheduling. We've talked about the actors as it pertains to scheduling and getting those shots, and that shot list, which you did not have. Mm-hmm. You just had it in your mind, right? Those parts are super important to kind of touch on, because when we're talking about these things, we're talking about the making of Silver Woods, but we're also talking about the kind of do's and don'ts of your first film. And even though this wasn't technically your first film, in a way it was, because you weren't working with your friends any longer. You're working with people you'd never met before,
Yeah.
besides just in casting and locations,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. So, I guess the next step. So we've talked already about lodging and some of the creative ways you've gone about doing things, and your gear scheduling. So I really want to touch on, not to make this whole segment of this one, because we have so many different films to get to, but I do want to ask you a few more questions. And that kind of starts to sit on your feelings when you got home, after you wrapped everything with Silverwoods in your home, and you're looking at this footage, kind of your initial reaction to the shots that you got. You're putting it all in your editor. You were using Premiere at the time?
Yep.
So kind of just your feelings about what you did. Did you do a good job? Did you not do a good job? Were you disappointed in yourself? Were you happy? And kind of just the overall, as the kiddos say now, the overall vibe of the day when you got home from filming Silverwoods and you actually got to look at the material.
Well, I did not look at it the first day. I will say that. I vividly remember coming home, opening my back door, and crashing on the couch. And I slept for a pretty long time. And then I think I got something to eat. And I think I decided at that point I wasn't going to touch anything until the next day. So I put away my gear, and I plugged in the hard drives and got it ready. And then the next morning I got up and I started, skipping around some of the clips. And in all honesty, I thought, and I still think, a lot of the shots look really good. I think the snow was a blessing in disguise. We were so blessed because I think it made the shots look 10 times better than if it was just a forest.
Not only that, but you got to admit also that snow added to a lot of noise cancellation that you wouldn't have normally had. So it kind of worked out in your benefit.
It suppressed everything, That was actually like one of the first times I had been in falling snow. I had been in falling snow when I was younger, but I don't really remember it. And my family had gone up to Flagstaff a couple of times to play in the snow. But it had always previously snowed and never snowed while we went up there. So, and Elise went to NAU, and I think it snowed on us like one time when I was up there. And it was like the piddliest little 20-minute flurry. So this was like the first time. And I got to tell you, I had no idea how silent it was. I just remember looking around being like, what? Because I had no idea. But I think the only thing I had right away that I noticed was I knew the sound was going to be a problem. And I mean, that is expected because we used bullet mics. We didn't use any sort of boom. So all of the sound is basically in-camera sound, just with a microphone on top. So the quality's a little bit better, not much.
And Mike's back then on cameras, they didn't have any. It was just in the camera mic. It didn't have any compression on it.
No, and I was using cheap mics too because I didn't. It was just before I had really started diving into equipment. It was really my filmmaking journey prior to Silverwoods was a lot of writing stories, coming up with ideas, testing things out. But, the furthest it ever went was YouTube, and we played Starman at Harkins Theaters once. We rented out a theater and had friends and family go and stuff. And that was the extent. And so this was really my first eye-opening moment where I was like, oh, the equipment I'm using isn't good. And to start thinking about how it could get better and what I could change. And I mean, right away, the audio was the weakest point for sure.
And there's no way to overcome that. Now, today, there's plenty of ways to overcome that. If you have reasonable audio, you can overcome it. Like right now, I'm using a bullet mic in my camera. Of course, the cameras are much better now. The audio processor and cameras are much better now. But I'm just using a Rode mic, which I guess is actually a really good mic.
I'm
but
using
it's
a
bullet
Rode mic. Yeah, my
All right.
my pod mic.
Oh, that's good stuff. But back then, you didn't have that. But I guarantee, if you gave me the sound for Silverwoods today, I could clean it up
Yeah.
with the stuff that we have now. I mean, I got some really bad audio just driving in the car for different things that we've done, and I'm like, I'm gonna clean that right up, and I can clean it right up. Almost no road noise, just a natural amount. So there's a lot you can do, but you couldn't do it back then. What was that? 2015?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, 15 or 16.
It was not very long ago, but it was still long enough ago that where they didn't have any of that stuff
It's
yet.
coming up on a decade, so.
Jeez, we were so young. So that's a part of it. That's part of the question. And the next part, because I do want to get to a point where we can wrap this up and move to the next thing.
Yep,
Because how many films do we have? I mean, we have a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
A lot. We want to make sure you guys can. 2 parts for each film will get us till next year at least. So
At least, yes.
at least. So, and this is we're starting off with a film that was a decade ago. So I guess the next part, and this is the part that a lot of filmmakers struggle with, and I don't want to paint anybody in a bad light, but I remember calling you up and talking to you probably about 2 weeks after the shoot. And you had shared a little snippet with me, and I said, "This is really good. This is really good, Clay. I like what you did." And I don't do that a lot. I'm a pretty professional guy. If someone wants to send me something, that's fine. I just don't generally do that.
Yeah.
But I was like, "This is really good. What are you going to do with it?" And he says, "I don't know. I'm probably not going to do it. Probably put it on my bookshelf." And I was like, "You should consider the big D word, distributing this," into which you did. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many distributors you went with originally, like how many you sent out to, but you did go with one. And I kind of want to talk about the distribution process, how it made you feel from like the beginning of it when you were delivering all your deliverables, all that stuff, and just some of the challenges that you faced getting all those deliverables. I don't want to talk about the other things about the distribution that you got originally, because I don't think that that's going to help very many people. We'll just talk about it at the end. You know what I mean? Just a fair warning. But I do want to talk about, so you've made films, you've mixed all the audio for films before, you've laid out all of the cloth tracks or whatever you're going to use, you laid out music, you did all these things, and you're ready to distribute. And by the way, I don't remember talking about Stav in the last episode, so we will get to him at the end.
Yeah.
But
well, we're probably going to have to have more than 2 episodes about Silverwoods. So just to intervene real quick, I think.
No, you're probably right. But I do want to get as much as I can in this one, because
Sure.
the next one will be at least a half an hour.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we get this.
I think we should start with distribution on the next one, because there's a lot of detail that I could go into. I'll kind of like start it right now and answer your question, but there's a lot that I want to cover about distribution, because I think the big thing is people have sort of figured out distribution, but there's still a lot of overwhelming things you have to do that I think still to this day scare filmmakers, even though it's much more open and there are multiple ways. Like when I went to distribute Silverwoods, I did not know what I was doing. The reason I told you I wasn't going to do anything with it was because I didn't know how you do things with it. So I actually reached out to a friend who at the time I didn't even really know. I think I had just heard his name or talked to him once, but it was Nick LaRoviere. And, we've worked on several films. He will come up in conversation because he's been on several of our sets. But he was the first person that I talked to about distribution, and him and his buddy Joe, they had just distributed their film Genesis, Fall of the Crime Empire, I want to say is what I think that's what it's called.
Yeah,
it's just called Genesis though. But and I just kind of like, I think I got his number from you or from I got his number somehow. And I called him while I was at work, actually, at Little Caesars. And we talked for about 20 minutes. And he just kind of told me how they got their film distributed. And I thought, well, shoot, I could just do that too. So I did. And I think for Silver Woods, I only sent the film to about 2 or 3 other distributors, and I never heard back from any of them. Just nothing. Or I might have gotten like one very blatant no. Um, but yeah, I at the time it was just look up indie movies, and Amazon Prime would list who the distributor was. So you'd find, I think another big one at the time was Terror Films. They're still around. Um, but you'd go to their website and find the like contact info and just shoot them an email. Now there's companies that you can just upload your stuff, or they have a separate section where it's like distribute with us, or give us your content and we'll put your film out. But back then it was just a random email of, to whom it may concern. I'm looking to get my film distributed. With Silver Woods, I don't think I had a screener initially ready, so I sent out a trailer, the poster that I had made, and just some background and like a synopsis. And then I remember we ended up going with Tomcat Films / Summerhill Films. I don't know if they're both. The guy that owns the company, his name is Ted. It's all the information I'll give. But he got back to me and was interested in Silver Woods. And he sent me back a 58-page document that I pretended to read through because it was like just way over my head. And what it amounted to was, I don't want to bash anybody, but what it amounted to was I lose the rights to the film. I'm never going to get money for the film. And that's the end of that. So I signed it.
Yeah. So I guess what we should tell people is, if you don't know how to read a contract, get someone to read the contract for you. Find an entertainment attorney. They're not very expensive. There's plenty out there, and there's probably some in your town that you live in. Get somebody like that to read the contract to make sure it's good, because what's more important than getting your film out to the masses is to make sure you're also protected.
Yep.
Now, I was going to not talk about that till the very end, but I think that's a really good place to kind of slow down and grind to a stop, because I do want to kind of to float back a little bit next episode into talking about not the editing process as much as finding the score that you wanted to use, how you used it, how you've gone about doing it in the future, things like that, and a little bit more about just the deliverables that you had to get together just to get this thing distributed, which haven't changed very much.
No, it's the same. That's like the one thing that hasn't changed, and that'll be a great discussion, because I think I went to say this, and I don't know if I actually did, but when I went to do all this for the first time, there was no information about it. That's why I had to talk to Nick and find out from other filmmakers, and some filmmakers are more open to talking about this sort of thing. Others keep their secrets, which is fine. And, the thing that I'll touch on with distribution, because I know we're going to talk about it in the future, but just to follow up in case you only watch this episode, but you should probably watch the next one too, is when you get those contracts, the biggest thing I have learned, Adam already touched on making sure you know what you're reading or find someone who can read it. But the biggest thing I've learned is you can ask questions. I mean, there's been plenty of conversations had with distributors that I've dealt with since Silver Woods, and had I known really going in that was a choice, my end goal with Silver Woods probably would have changed. Maybe we would have made money. Maybe we would have sold the film to someone else. Who knows? But just because you get a contract and an offer doesn't mean you can't ask them what this means, or can I change this, or I don't like this. Let's get rid of this. What are they going to say? No? Okay, then. It's not meant to be.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world. You'll find your place. But I do want to stop there. I think that you've given everybody a lot of information, but we just packed a whole ton of information into like less than 40 minutes. So, a ton. So, guys, again, we really hope you like what you're watching here. Clay is bearing his heart and soul about his first film to you. So if you do like what you see and what we've been telling you, what is that noise? What are you doing?
I was pounding my heart.
Oh, okay. His
Like,
heart and soul.
Yes, yeah. And
Yes,
and
we're
then
on the same room, obviously.
I started pointing down because I thought you were gonna say to like and subscribe. So I've messed
that's what I'm gonna do.
messed that up now.
I'm going to go say it anyway. So if you really like what you saw here today, guys, please do us a favor, like and subscribe. Share if you'd like to with your family, friends, especially with people that are making films. If you have a loved one that's making a film right now and you think this information is useful, please share it with them. We love to give our information out and help anybody we can. This is not, we don't operate like a lot of filmmakers. Our lives are open books. We would like everybody to succeed, and that's why we're doing what we're doing here today. So thanks so much for watching, guys. And until next time, this has been Through the Lens. See you guys later.